Before I tell you what Daniel Carver did, I need to tell you about the smile. Because that smile, one fraction of a second, barely a twitch, is what unraveled everything. It's what cost him everything. It's what gave Melissa's sister the courage to keep fighting when no one believed her. And it's what kept one detective awake at night, staring at a paused frame on her laptop screen for weeks. June 14, 2019, Daniel Carver stood in front of cameras and told the world he just wanted his wife back. He said her name. He described her laugh. His voice broke, just slightly, on cue. And then, just before he looked up at the cameras, for the briefest, most involuntary moment in 11 days of public grief, he smiled. I want you to see that frame right now. Look at it, because that is the face of a man who knew exactly where his wife was. That is the face of a man who believed he had won. What I'm about to tell you is a story about control, not the explosive kind, not shouting and broken glass, the quiet kind that wears a collared shirt and coaches Little League, the kind that holds doors open and fixes neighbors' fences, the kind that is so calm, so steady, so utterly normal, that by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. But how did no one see it coming? The answer is more disturbing than you think. Stay with me, because this story does not go where you think it goes. Harlow Creek, Virginia, population 6,214 on the day Melissa Carver disappeared, 6,213 after. It's the kind of town that still has a hardware store on Main Street because people still fix things instead of replacing them, a diner called May's that has served the same peach pie since 1967, and don't ask May for the recipe because she will look you in the eye and lie. A little league field with a scoreboard that gets repainted every spring by a rotating cast of volunteers. A church that has seen every family in town through every joy and grief they've ever carried. Harlow Creek was the kind of place where people moved to slow down, where they moved to feel safe, where they moved to stop worrying. That, as it turns out, was exactly the problem. Daniel Carver was third-generation Harlow Creek. His grandfather, O. Carver, had built 14 houses on Elm Ridge Road with his own hands in the 1950s. His father, Robert, had run Carver Insurance on Main Street for 31 years. Daniel had grown up knowing that when you walked down the street, people nodded. People remembered your name. People trusted you. Not because you'd earned it, because your grandfather had. And in a town like Harlow Creek, that kind of trust is currency. Daniel Carver had been spending it his entire life. By every measure that Harlow Creek used to measure a man, Daniel was exceptional. 30-8 years old, 6 feet even. Dark hair just beginning to silver at the temples in a way that made him look distinguished rather than old. He had steady hands and a steady voice and steady eyes. His high school football coach, Marcus Webb, put it this way when investigators spoke to him. Investigator, what was Daniel like in high school? Coach Webb, reliable. That's the word. You could run a play 100 times and Daniel would execute it the same way every single time. No variance, no emotion, just execution. I used to think that was a gift. I'm not sure I think that anymore. We'll come back to what Coach Webb said in the courtroom, because one word he used, that exact word, became the most important thing any witness said in this entire trial. Melissa Hartley was from Staunton, Virginia. About 40 minutes north of Harlow Creek. She had come south for a teaching job at Harlow Creek Elementary because the school had called her personally after her student teaching reviews had described her as, and I'm quoting directly from the evaluation, the kind of teacher children remember for the rest of their lives. She was 24 when she moved. She had copper red hair that she usually wore in a braid or a messy knot because, she said, she worked with 6-year-olds and you didn't wear your good hair to work with 6-year-olds. She had a laugh that came from somewhere deep and landed somewhere wide, and she had an unshakable belief that every child in her classroom deserved to feel seen. That belief, that instinct to truly see people, was the thing that made her a great teacher. It was also, ultimately, the thing that put her in danger, because she saw Daniel Carver for exactly what he was. Far too late, but she saw him. They met on a Saturday afternoon in July 2007, a mutual friend's backyard barbecue. The kind of August afternoon where everything is slightly too hot and someone has brought a speaker that's playing so nothing nobody chose. Daniel arrived alone. He stood near the drinks table for 20 minutes before approaching anyone, not because he was shy. Later, people who were there would reflect on this and realize he was watching, deciding who was worth his time. And then he crossed the lawn to Melissa.
Met someone today at the Hendersons, Daniel Carver. Dark hair. Very still, like a person who learned to be very still on purpose. He brought me a lemonade and said he was sorry it wasn't colder, like it was his fault the pitcher was warm. I laughed. He didn't, exactly, just watched me laugh. I couldn't tell if he was charming or studying me for a test. Either way, I'm thinking about him.
She was thinking about him. That journal entry would be read aloud in court 12 years later. By her sister. In a room that was completely silent. And later, much later, investigators would discover that Melissa had been keeping that journal for years, hidden, locked, in a place Daniel never knew about. What they found inside it changed everything about this case. The courtship was fast. Daniel was attentive in that way that, at 24, feels like devotion. He remembered everything she said. He texted exactly the right amount, not too much, not too little. He met her friends and said the right things. He met her parents and said better things. He made her feel, as she wrote in that journal, like the most interesting person in the room. They were engaged within 6 months. Married 14 months after that. June 12, 2009, on the lawn behind her parents' house in Staunton. Her grandmother played piano on a wheeled out upright. Melissa cried during the vows. Daniel smiled. Just smiled, dry-eyed and smiling. Melissa told her sister Karen that night, whispered it in the bridal suite. He didn't cry. Is that weird? Karen said. Some people don't. It doesn't mean anything. Melissa nodded. You're right. It doesn't mean anything. But she wrote it in the journal. She wrote everything in the journal.